Organizational culture refers to the beliefs and behaviors that determine how your people and leadership interact with each other, then how that translates into the services you provide. Service begins internally with how your people service each other. You do not need to measure external customer service, just measure internal service. We know of a CEO who would ask, "Who is your customer?" The answer he was seeking was who we serve inside of the business. For example, marketing serves sales with creating the message to market. Sales serves marketing on giving feedback about what is happening in the market and what resources they need. Reality is, this doesn't happen. There is a constant war between marketing and sales, with a lack of appreciation for the part they each play. A great culture has sales and marketing working in harmony to produce the results the business wants. Have you ever heard the words inside your business, "We have a great culture," when that is not your experience? The unspoken culture is one of keep your head down and your mouth shut. All of this happens when there has been no examination of the current culture or a grounded understanding of what a good culture looks like. Most leaders struggle to look in the mirror and acknowledge their contribution to the poor state of their company culture. Today, our intention is to wake us all up to what it takes to build a kick-ass culture, and it starts with you, the leaders. There is no easy road or silver bullet. It will take all that you've got. What I know, it's worth it. Building the culture here at Integrity and Values has not been easy, and we've had our shaky moments and tough conversations to keep us all together. Understanding culture can be nebulous. There are so many motherhood statements like people who play together stay together, that measuring and knowing what is happening is very difficult. In far too many companies, there is the appearance of harmony and alignment. When you just scratch the surface, there is a level of simmering dysfunctionality, which we as leaders find hard to own. If we cannot be with the dark side of our cultures, we cannot transform them. We all want a nice culture, and we are genuine about that. Except nice cultures don't work and often have the opposite effect. The result is a lack of honest communication, courage, innovation, and accountability, all in the service of maintaining the status quo. An ineffective culture can bring down the organisation and its leadership. The result is disengaged employees, high staff turnover, poor customer relations, and lowering profits. It takes courage, it takes courageous leadership to intervene into a toxic or poor culture. To begin, you require a clear intention, knowing what you'd consider a healthy, robust culture to be and look like. One that can withstand the buffering of external changes, and a leadership team who knows how to fight and fight clean. We will spend time today talking about fighting and fighting clean, what it takes and the results it will bring. We will also discuss what a cultural intervention looks like, what the process is, and the courage it will take for you to begin. Also knowing culture is not a set and forget. It's not a vision and a set of values on the wall that has become wallpaper. It is the living, breathing heart of your organisation. If you still have the recording going on in your head about how great your culture is, here is some of the research data on the impact of a toxic culture. 49% of people have thought and are thinking of leaving their current organisation. 1 in 5 people attribute a toxic culture as the reason for leaving their jobs. According to research by the Society of Human Resource Management, the cost of people turnover attributed to poor workplace culture exceeded $223 billion over the last 5 years. That is a huge number and hard to comprehend. Let's unpack this topic and give each of you something you can do today to impact your culture. For those of you who are new to our webinars, we will send you to breakout rooms where, whoops, that just did a big jump. Hang on a second. Where we will pose a question for discussion, then we will bring you back. Our first question is, what do you believe keeps poor cultures in place? Off you go. So what does keep a poor culture in place? The biggest problem for many people is not the work on their desk. That's the easiest part of the job. Nothing is especially challenging. Difficulty comes into the job when you are dealing with politics, stupid rules, and a fearful environment. This sucks the heart and energy out of the business. It just gets too hard and people either quit and leave or quit and stay. A HR manager who I spoke to within the last 6 months said our business is littered with people that have quit and stayed. They are so difficult to deal with because there is a high degree of pretense and cynicism. The quit and stayers keep the toxic culture in place. They are disempowered and can't intervene into their own fear-driven personal system, let alone the toxic culture. Who in your business has quit and stayed, and what will you do to empower them? Take a moment, think of who it is, and write their name down. What is the conversation you have not had with them as their leader? Here's the challenge. Go and have the conversation. Gently inquire into what is going on with them, then listen. According to W. Edwards Deming, 96% of the time, people want to do a great job. It is the system that does not support them to do so. Let's look at some of the major systemic issues that keep an unhealthy culture in place. Fear. Fear of reprisal, fear of ridicule, fear of failure. Imagine what information you are not getting because people are afraid. Titles and hierarchy. When people are concerned about what their job title is and where they fit in the hierarchy, and are quick to tell you what their title or status is, you know you have a cultural issue if that's what's happening. Obstructive rules and policies. There are a lot of rules and policies which people are afraid to break. So people keep their heads down and don't step out of line. Poor leadership, which is displayed in humiliating or dismissing anyone that speaks out of turn. An indicator is when people are willing to step over others just to stay on the right side of the boss. Another is when a manager who uses threatening language as a means to get the job done, and then they are not held to account for their behaviour. There's a lack of trust. Trust is foundational for a successful business. In a toxic working environment, trust is something that is earned rather than simply given. Morale is low and people don't know how to change what is happening. Bullying and gossip is tolerated. Here is something brave you could do. Next time you hear a piece of gossip, tell the person they have 12 hours to go and talk to the person they have the complaint about, or you'll support them to have the conversation. See how that goes. There is a lack of honesty. People don't speak up even when they are given ridiculous budgets or are expected to implement stupid ideas. They say nothing. Some time ago, I worked with an organisation that set impossible budgets, expecting a year-on-year increase of 20% when the market ran at less than 7%. This was an international organisation. The Australian CEO shared with me, we can't keep cutting resources and staff to reach this ridiculous number. My managers and leaders are doing 3 people's jobs. When he challenged the international president, he was fired. The culture was seriously toxic. And out of the 8 leaders on that executive team, there are only 2 remaining in the organisation, both of which are the maintainers of the toxic culture. This organisation in Australia is losing business to their competitors, even though they had a reputation of being extraordinarily strategic. They have lost that edge because of their poor culture and an unwillingness to take care of their people. These are just a few of the indicators of a poor culture. Be brave right now. Rate your organisation on a scale of 1 to 5. How much any of these issues are present in your organisation. 1 is, we're fantastic. And 5 is, we're drowning in this stuff. On a positive note, we have a CEO that has worked with us several times over the years. He has the best ability to think strategically in any leader I've worked with. As soon as he got himself settled into his new role, he contacted us and said, let's go again. It's time to build a new culture. He was clear this was going to take time and effort, and he was prepared to invest in the people and ensure that they were empowered to do their jobs at a whole new level. In other words, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So, let's go into our next question. We've talked about how we keep a toxic culture in place. Let's examine what maintains engagement and fun. Your question? What maintains engagement and fun for people at work? Off you go. Welcome back. Engagement and fun at work is at the source of creating a great culture. According to research, performance reviews and quarterly catch-ups aren't making any difference. The question we want to ask ourselves is, what does it take for people to be fully engaged and for work to occur as a form of play? Every job has tasks that we don't enjoy. When the whole job becomes about those unenjoyable tasks, it's highly likely your culture is the problem. The test for engagement and fun at work are the memories and experiences it leaves behind. What do we as leaders leave behind after each conversation with our people? We have found there are 7 requirements critical for engagement to allow for effective work to take place. When these requirements are met for people, work occurs as a form of play and people say they are having fun. Productivity improves and the quality of the work lifts. As a leader, it is futile to ask people when they are walking out of the door why they are leaving. It is more advantageous to know early when they are disengaged. Therefore, you ask these questions at least once a quarter. It will give you a heads up. Then you can talk about the actions you and they can take to re-engage and have the work be fun for them and you. We've listed the 7 requirements for you today. We will only unpack 2 of them. The first, the degree of challenge. Different roles have different degrees of challenge. Each can be measured on this scale. We ask people, what do they want? And then we ask them, what are they getting? Let me walk you through how this is done. What level of your abilities or skills are being utilized in a demanding and stimulating way? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much challenge do you want in your role? Write that number down right now. How much challenge do you want? Now, have a think. How much challenge are you actually getting? Write that number down. Subtract the number you want from the number that you get. Your number is either positive, negative, or 0. Don't worry about that right now. We'll explain what that means in a moment. The second requirement we will discuss today is the meaningfulness of the work. You feel your contribution is appreciated, adds value, and makes a difference to the organisation and the people. Your question? How much do you want your role to make a contribution and a difference to the company? Again, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a contribution and difference do you want to make? Write that number down. How much are you actually getting? Write that down. Subtract the number you want from the number you are getting. Okay, now let's analyze the numbers. To begin, let's look at the degree of challenge. Let me give you an example of a conversation I had with a CEO some years ago. When I asked him how much challenge he wanted, he said 4. And what he was getting was 9. His working world was in overwhelm and he couldn't talk to anyone about his distress. He didn't want the role in the first place and he was definitely not having fun. To compensate for his feelings of inadequacy, he went into major control mode, which bottlenecked the business. No one could make a decision that was more than No one could make a decision that has more than a $500 spend without his say-so. Imagine how that was going for everyone. If you asked the challenge question of the people inside of your business, you want the answer to be 0, plus or minus 1. If they are getting too much, they will be anxious, stressed, and overwhelmed, and are probably thinking of leaving. Too little, they are bored, and people who are bored get up to mischief. And they want to leave too. I recall about 8 years ago when I did this test with Jay, and he told me he wanted a 9 in challenge and he was getting a 2. That's a difference of 7. I started heaping on the work, giving him new challenges and responsibilities. When I asked him next time, he said, "Enough now, I'm happy." That's the power of knowing what someone's engagement score is. Then you can influence it. Here's another example. One of our clients was struggling to fill a role in their business. They had been advertising and had not found any suitable candidates. I just happened to say, "What about Kathy?" And he said, "She doesn't want any challenge." I asked him, "How long ago was that conversation?" He said, 7 years ago. She had 2 little children under 4 years of age. I said, "Well, they're not under 4 anymore. Go and ask her if she's up for a challenge." Guess what? She jumped at the opportunity and is still doing a stellar job. This is not a set and forget. You keep asking the questions. Even if someone has a 0 plus or minus 1, make sure you know what keeps them engaged and having fun. Now to the meaningfulness of the work. From driving a forklift to customer service to the CEO, we cannot get enough of this. Finding meaning in our work is an important human need, and having this satisfied impacts all areas of our lives. As leaders, ensuring people at any level in the organisation experience how they fit into the whole adds meaning. If you are not getting enough meaningfulness out of your work, it just becomes an unpleasant chore. And the pay packet is the main reason you are there. To increase meaningfulness, people need to understand how their work fits into the whole and contributes to it. When this is accomplished inside of your organisation, people take pride in their work, productivity increases, and the culture improves. These scores are impacted by your current view of life. Understanding how much an individual requires to enjoy their work is the first step to creating a great culture. When these requirements are not met, it reduces productivity and work satisfaction, contributing to your poor culture. Having these conversations on a regular basis is imperative. People's personal circumstances change, and the level of challenge wanted will be affected by this. This flows on to the other 5 fundamentals that have work occur as a form of play. Let's go to our last takeaway around what it takes to intervene into a poor culture. Recognizing that a systemic intervention is the necessary first step. There are 2 parts to a systemic intervention: what behaviours you will give up and what new behaviours you will take on going forward. Our last question for the day is name some of the small interventions you can make to improve your culture today. Off you go. Welcome back. So what are some of the small interventions you can make? People experience the culture in many ways. A lot of the time, the system disempowers them. They know the system isn't working and have no idea how to intervene. Before we go into some of the ways you could intervene, let's look at, let's have a quick look at what does it take to think systemically and how that could empower you. To begin, each organisation creates the system, or in other words, the culture of how we do things around here, and it is embedded in the behaviours of the leaders and cascades through the organisation and into the rest of the business. When we think systemically, we take a helicopter view of the organisation and start naming what is happening. This removes blame, fault, justifications or excuses, denial and defence. At the same time, knowing that each of the elements, that is the people in the system, keep whatever is going on in place. In other words, culture is how we do things and behave around here. The people within the system act as if what is going on within the system is true and accurate. You'll hear comments like, "That's just the way it is around here." Or, "We've tried that and it doesn't work. She's to blame." Or, "You can't say that." Well, what will it take to say that? Who will you upset when you do? When we understand we are responsible for maintaining the system and no one is to blame or at fault, we begin to get some freedom. The problem is we live in a world of someone is to blame. And while that is present, we will look for someone to blame and we don't examine what our part in maintaining the system is. This is hard to grapple with. When the system is set up for blame and fault, and we believe the power is out of our control. Systems work to perpetuate themselves. In fact, we keep breathing life into it by what we say, how we behave, and what we do. We will not change until the pain of keeping it the way it is becomes greater than the pain of change. As humans, we will shy away from the pain. This is where people quit and leave to find a better working environment. The first strategic intervention is into your own system. What is the view you have of yourself? How does your behaviour keep the poor culture in place? When you change your behaviour, especially when you are in leadership, you give the people around you something different to respond to. This is the beginning of a strategic intervention. For example, imagine you're a round, prickly ball and you begin the work of smoothing off some of your prickly edges. Sounds easy, hey? Well, it's not. You've been prickly for a while and they don't believe you've really changed. It takes time for people to believe you are truly different. While they are testing the waters with you, if you lose heart and revert back to being prickly, they will say, "See, it's them. This doesn't work, and why would I trust that he's for real?" It takes time to do a lasting strategic intervention. At Integrity and Values, we do it at 3 levels: the leader and their personal system, the leadership team and their system, and then at the organisational level. We often hear from leaders, "We want you to work with our middle managers or shop floor," when they have not done the work on themselves. Allow me to reiterate, the source of the issue is with you, the CEO, and your leadership team. You are also at the source of the solution. Whatever is going on in the organization from a macro level is going on at a micro level in the executive team. So when the children are fighting, they are having the fight that mum and dad are not having. In other words, when sales and operations are not in agreement, neither is the head of sales and the head of operations. They are not talking about what's important, and they are sweeping the issues under the table. The problem is their team is at the effect of that and are mirroring the silent argument. A strategic intervention is intentionally changing one or more parts of the system. This means that all the elements within the system will change also, because they have different information to bounce off. You cannot force people to change. They will simply respond differently because the experience they are having with their leadership is now different. Everyone is responsible for their own change and transformation. As they do that, they create a new cultural system. So now that we have explained systems thinking, some small interventions that you could make today would be: change your language. Instead of telling people that they are wrong, talk about what didn't work and discuss how it could be done differently, listening to their thinking. Don't blindside people. Prior to a robust conversation with someone, make sure you prepare them beforehand. If you want to learn more about this, check out our recording of the Robust Conversations webinar. As a leader, seek feedback. One of the most powerful pieces of homework we give a leader is to complete our awareness interviews with 10 people inside of their organisation, including their immediate reports. Just to give you an idea of the intensity of the questions, one is, what can you rely on me for? And another, what can you not rely on me for? Your only response to whatever people say to you is thank you. Don't argue with them. The only way to have these conversations is face-to-face, one-on-one. If you're interested in the awareness interviews, let us know or pop it in the chat box and we'll contact you. When things are not working, ask yourself, what am I responsible for here? Be ruthlessly honest with yourself and go and clean up any mess that you created without falling on your sword. Stop the gossiping. Gossiping is a character assassination on someone. If you have a problem with someone, go and talk to that person. They are the only one who can do something about it. If you are scared, ask for support. One of the biggest issues stopping cultural transformation is fear. There are two opposing forces when we are afraid. There is the disturbing motive we have to transform our culture and create a great place for people to work. Opposing that is our reactive fear, because we don't know what to do and so we do nothing, staying stuck in the fear with the current culture. You can measure the tension between your desired culture and what you currently have. The Integrity and Values Tension Index tells you what your culture is and then gives you a pathway to what you want. For example, if we ask you how important is truthfulness to you personally on a scale of 0 to 10, is it important? And 10 is 0, on a scale of 0 to 10. 0, it's not important. And 10 is, it's very important. What would you say? Then we would ask you to evaluate your team as you see it today. How much of this attribute is displayed and easily seen on the team? The rating is poor to excellent. Imagine if you said you wanted a truthfulness of 10. It's very important to you. And you rated your team's demonstration of truthfulness at 2. You will be at odds with them. The difference between what we say we want to be and what is actually happening is the tension that is being carried in the organizational culture. There are 20 major cultural tension points, and they tell the story of your culture. Unpacking this gives you as leaders your intervention points. There are hotspots, and if you work on them, it unravels your toxic culture and begins the journey to a healthy culture. People say they want things to be different as long as it's someone else that's doing the changing. Change starts with you, and that's scary because there is a demand for us as leaders to be vulnerable. In the moment we acknowledge our fear, the fear begins to lose its control on us. So, with shaking knees and trembling voice, we begin to speak out loud about how we would like things to be. The fear does not disappear. It now just takes second place to that disturbing motive for the culture that we dream about. This journey is tough, and it can feel a bit like a roller coaster ride. You will have big wins and small private triumphs on this journey. As human beings, we spend 2/3 of our waking life at work. Be part of creating a great place to work and do whatever it takes. It is truly worth it. Thank you for being here this morning. I will now pass you back to Tama to close.